Before we get into today's episode, I'd love to introduce our sponsor, Jane, a clinic management software and EMR. The team at Jane understands that clocking out from the clinic doesn't always mean you're clocking out for the day. Instead, it's often the start to charting long into the evening. With time-saving charting features like custom smart narratives, chart duplication, and dictation, Jane helps you finish charting your patient or client notes during work hours, not after hours. And to save you even more time, you have access to Jane's chart template library that's fully stocked with pre-made templates that have been generously shared by practitioners in the community. You can even customize them further with charting tools like side-by-side photos, checkboxes, and range scales. To see how Jane can help you free up your evenings from admin tasks, head to meet.jane.app/more-time to book your personalized demo. But if you're ready to get started, you can use the code WELLNESS1MO at the time of sign up for a 1-month grace period applied to your new account. Hi there, and welcome to the Wellness Center Creators Podcast. I'm Kendall Hagenson.
And I'm Anna Rudell. We're thrilled to have you join us on this journey of creating innovative, patient-centered wellness centers.
As experienced health and wellness providers, we've seen firsthand the challenges of delivering comprehensive, holistic care to our patients.
That's why we created this podcast, to share the knowledge, strategies, and insights we've gained from our own experiences and from connecting with experts in the field.
Each episode, we'll dive into a different aspect of building and growing a successful wellness center, from developing a strong multidisciplinary team to implementing cutting-edge technologies and treatment approaches.
We'll also share practical tips, resources, and real-world examples to help you overcome common obstacles and streamline your processes.
Our goal is to empower you with the tools and confidence you need to create a thriving wellness center that truly makes a difference in your patients' lives.
So whether you're just starting out or looking to take your existing practice to the next level, you're in the right place.
Get ready to learn, grow, and be inspired. Let's create something amazing together.
Welcome to the Wellness Center Creators Podcast.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Wellness Center Creators Podcast. Today on the show, we have Sarah Cook. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Sarah, let's start by having you introduce yourself and share a bit about your story and let people know how you got to be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I call myself a creative mentor and creative writing coach. I really like to talk about the work that I do in terms of stewardship. I like the language of stewardship and advocacy. And I think my past experience as a social worker is probably playing a big role in how I'm framing the work that I do. So I see my job as existing at the intersection of these two very specific periods of time in my life. The one is my education. I went to college and grad school for English, creative writing, poetics. I taught for a little bit, was in academia until I sort of couldn't stand being there any longer, and then had this detour where I went into social work and social services and spent about 8 years primarily involved with housing advocacy. So I worked with foster youth and young adults transitioning out of foster care who were in transitional housing spaces, who were struggling with housing stability. Most recently, I was a case manager at a community mental health agency, so doing some housing advocacy specifically for adults who were also navigating mental illness and for whom finding or maintaining their housing was a difficulty that was getting all tangled up in that. So these two, from a certain perspective, two very different chunks of my life spent in very different situations. I really view the work that I'm doing now as sitting right right at the nexus of the two. So thinking of my role, taking very seriously the fact that I call myself also a trauma-informed coach and a trauma-informed mentor, someone who is supporting people with developing creative practices. Oftentimes that's writing because I'm a writer as well, but it's not always writing. So helping people with their relationship with their creativity more generally, and really doing that very, very specifically through a trauma-informed lens, through a strengths-based lens. Ideally, if I work with someone for 6 months, I want them to get to the end of that chunk of time and feel like, oh, I'm a better self-advocate of my own creative practices and my own work and my voice than I was when I first started working with Sarah. So that's a quick and dirty summary of where I'm at and what's informing this work.
And Sarah, why do you feel like it's so important to bring a trauma-informed lens into creative spaces and creative practices and coaching?
Yeah, part of me wants to say, I really have this vision of a world where trauma-informed practices and communication are the norm and are not a specialty that we have to go into certain places to access. Like I'm forever on the hunt for a trauma-informed hairstylist because I just have a really hard time getting my hair cut, and I just need someone who's going to understand that, right? So I do very much view trauma-informed practices as something that should be the norm, but particularly when it comes to our creative work, creativity is this thing that I think we need to look at holistically. I sort of like the metaphor of creativity as being this thing that exists on both sides of the veil. So there's the earthbound stuff, the tangible stuff, the creative practices and habits that we develop, the skills we build, the work that I make, and the tangible stuff that goes into me doing that work, right? Kind of the earthbound stuff. But there's also the stuff that gets very quickly harder to account for, the emotional aspects of our creativity, the spiritual kind of cosmic sense, the soupy kind of mysterious stuff that intersects with our creativity too. And I think that's also where our emotions, our dreams, our imagination, our intuition, all that kind of inherently tender stuff lives there too. And I think when we're talking about having a really robust and healthy relationship with our creativity, we have to be talking about both parts. Like the stuff that happens on the page and all the stuff that happens off the page. And you can't really tend one without also tending the other. So I think that right there, so much of our greatest gifts, but also our wounding, our trauma, our vulnerabilities, all of that stuff sort of touches our creativity. And so in my mind, to hold anything other than a trauma-informed space for people who are working on their creativity, working on their practices, developing their craft, it's to take this thing that is so intersectional and multidimensional and flatten it out. The sticky stuff in our life is going to come up, whether we're making art that is directly about that or not, because it all touches somewhere. And so I think it's about serving the person in a really holistic and comprehensive way.
Sarah, I just love the way you talk. I could listen to you forever. Honestly, you're made for podcasts.
Thank you. I really appreciate that reflection. And I've had a few other people say that, and it never gets old, because I have to tell you, I get so nervous talking and I'm so much more comfortable writing. So it's always kind of wonderful. Yeah, I just really appreciate that reflection.
Oh, you're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. My question to you was, and this comes from a delight by having you on this podcast with us, because recently I had the joy of being part of a workshop of creating our bios. And I thought, I haven't done my bio in 20 years. And when I have done it, I've let AI do it. But I put myself out there in this moment and did a bio, and it was incredibly vulnerable, and it really took me by surprise. I thought I was just going to show up and have a bit of a laugh and write down some words and come up with something beautiful, but it really shook me to my core of how vulnerable that was. Tell me who your clients are and how they find you?
It's such a good question, partly because I don't have a clear and concise answer for it. There do seem to be two main trajectories. Okay, so there's the person who comes to me and they're like, hey, I have this book idea. I've been putting it off. It's stressing me out. Like they're very sort of hyper focused on, it's just this one simple thing. I just need to like get the pages produced and be done with it. And I'm here to sort of help steward them along with that. And usually the clients who come to me hyper focused on that goal, and I say this with a lot of affection, aren't yet paying a lot of attention to that other stuff that I talked about, the sort of like the way that their lived experiences, their emotions, their vulnerabilities are going to come along this ride of like creating this book,
Yes.
right? They're so focused on what's happening on the page. And so part of our time together is, yes, helping them steward and create the best book possible and honing their voice and their skills, but like holding space for that other side of things to make itself available. And then the other main route that I would say people approach me through is I work with a lot of people who are very confused about who and what they are. They're like, oh, well, I like to write, but I don't feel like I can call myself a writer. And I don't, maybe they have like a day job. Maybe they're a nurse or a social worker or a parent, but they just have this creative impulse and they just have this knowing that creativity needs to be playing a slightly bigger role in their daily life than it currently is. And they really don't have a goal or a specific aspiration. They just know there's a thing there that needs tending. And when they find me, it's just the best thing ever because we can just get really curious together and hold a lot of space and be really open and not stress about like overly defining what that has to look like, right? And we just sort of play and discover and experiment.
Sarah, why do you feel like it's so important for everyone to have some type of relationship with writing?
Yeah, I'm stubborn about this one because, so there's this sort of cliche that a lot of English majors will hear very early on in like a writing 101 class, which is that writing is a mode of thinking. And it's sort of like, oh yeah, that thing. But it's also very true. And the reality is it doesn't matter how many good, insightful, deep conversations I have with the right kind of people. There's a certain quality of thinking and certain kinds of insights that are only going to reveal themselves to me on the page. It is sort of like another way of thinking. And we all benefit from the sort of self-awareness and insight and discovery that shows up in writing. To me, it's sort of like if the full scope of our life is a big house and we spend, some of the time in the living room, some of the time in the bedroom, right? Ideally, we're like taking up space in every room. It's like writing is a room that some of us just think, oh, well, I'm not a creative person, so I guess I don't need to write. We shut the door and lock it and think there's nothing in there for us. But there's always something in there for us because, again, there's a quality of thought, a quality of self-attention and self-awareness that I have found this again and again and again through my experience, through working with other people. It can't be replicated elsewhere. Like we need conversation and we need the page. And so even just a journaling practice, just having some kind of relationship to putting your thoughts down in language on the page and seeing what happens there. I really, really, really believe that it serves even the people who are the least attached to that idea of being creative. There's something there for everyone.
I know that a lot of the folk that you work with are neurodivergent.
Yeah.
As the mother of a child with dysgraphia, dyslexia,
Mm-hmm.
how would you encourage a writing practice?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I also think when we hear that phrase, writing practice, like for so many of us, I think we go back to some of the most rigid models that we inherit in very traditional classroom spaces that are not always accommodating of neurodivergent learners and are, rooms full of teachers who are doing their best to just accommodate the largest number of students. And, a lot of our divergencies don't get accommodated in that space, right? So I think also having a softer and broader and bigger and more inclusive model of what it can look like to write, I just think that's something that we don't see a lot of. And so there's this sense of like, well, for me to have a writing practice, my grammar has to be correct. My handwriting and penmanship have to be good. I have to make sense. Oh my goodness, writing doesn't need to make sense like that. And even that is just like this radical, strange idea that probably people are like, what are you talking about? Of course it does. No, it doesn't. Like we're talking about expression. So, I mean, I don't know. I even think of the relationship between drawing and writing, creating marks on a page. There's something there for everyone. And I think the struggle to envision that is really a testament to like just the limited models that we're presented with when we're learning to write and learning what it looks like to pick up a pen and sit down with a piece of paper and what's supposed to come out of us as a result.
I just think about for kids too, like what are they drawn to?
Yeah.
Like what do they like to look at? What do they like to read? What do they like to experience? And I know for like my older daughter, she's really drawn towards graphic novels.
Mm-hmm.
And so when she does writing, she likes to write in the form of books but they're often graphic novels or comic books. And whereas my other daughter, it might be more like a story form or just a word here or there or more pictures.
Totally.
So that's what I think about too.
Yeah, totally. And the thing is like all of it counts. All of that counts, right? Like a graphic novel. I have a client right now, phenomenal writer, writes beautiful prose, both in terms of fiction and nonfiction, and has a novel project that she's just in the very beginning stages of dreaming up, and had this huge kind of breakthrough realization that it's actually a story that needs to be told as a graphic novel. So she's actually like, changing her relationship to producing this word in language, and now is going to be collaborating with an illustrator. And the way that it's like opening up the creative process for her is so fascinating and inspiring. And I think all these different iterations of whatever it is we have to express, whatever stories we're drawn to tell, whether they're predominantly in language or visual or some combination of both, like what matters is the expression itself, right? That I think is what is so important, what can be so healing and clarifying and, kind of purpose driven, really, no matter what genre or form it looks like.
Let's talk about strengths-based editing. This is something that is important to you. What does it mean and why is it important?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, another beautiful, really important framework that I only encountered because of my time as a social worker. Never encountered this when I was actually in any classroom spaces or writing workshops. So for me, I guess two things come to mind. One, quite simply, I think us humans learn better when we're shown what we're doing well or interestingly, or something that, I put something on the page and someone says, whoa, this part here really captivated me. Or, oh, this thing you're talking about, like, I'm really curious about it. I kind of want to hear more. I'm going to learn more about what I'm doing well and be able to build on what I'm making if I see people engaging with my writing through that lens of like, what am I doing well? What's interesting? What's captivating? Versus what we tend to think of feedback looking like, which is the red pen that's crossing out the things that don't need to be there and mostly telling us what we've done wrong. So it's really with writing and with making art, it's and perhaps in any field, I think it's just really hard for most people to improve what they're doing just by being told what they're doing wrong. That doesn't really give me a lot of useful information. So I'm interested in helping people develop their craft and their voice by being a really enthusiastic and engaged reader of what they're doing and asking good questions, pointing out connections, noticing things, and letting them see what I notice and what that looks like. And I feel that that sort of strengths-based feedback that starts from the assumption of, oh, there's going to be like good things in here, interesting things in here, tell me more. That gives someone more useful information to work with. And I think too, in just like a broader sense, for me, a strengths-based lens also means that every person I'm talking to, whether they're in a free workshop I'm offering or we're working one-on-one in a mentorship container, I make the assumption that every single person I talk to has a creative voice that is valuable, has an interesting story to tell, is capable of creating something compelling. I don't say that, with rose-colored glasses on. I just think people are interesting. Like everybody, my partner and I talk about this all the time when we watch the most obscure documentaries. It's like, oh, you give any person time and space to talk about themselves. They're interesting. Everybody's interesting. Everybody has an interesting voice and story to tell. And so for me, there's also this sort of, I guess, like philosophical perspective of just, I make the assumption that everybody, if given the time and space to tap into their creativity, something cool is going to happen. And so far, I've yet to be proven wrong. So, that to me is also a huge part of that lens.
Tell us about your community, Sarah.
Yeah. Well, I feel, can you be more specific? Are you talking about like my Substack community?
Well, I have to admit to not knowing what a Substack is, but
yes.
I do know that you have a community.
Yes. We live in a strange time where I feel like I'm a part of multiple different communities, definitely a lot of different communities of other mentors and healers and practitioners and writers. I also publish a Substack, which is, I guess, technically a social media platform, but one where for writers. So you publish a newsletter, people sign up, they get it directly in their inbox. There's an app, it's becoming more of like a social media platform space. But at the end of the day, Substack is a publication platform for writers to self-publish. So I've been publishing a newsletter through Substack for a couple of years. And that has also, this is why I kind of glitched when you asked your question, because I thought, well, my readership there has sort of evolved into a little bit of a community. So I actually, through Substack, once a month, I host a virtual gathering called the Resiliency Circle. I hesitate to call it a workshop because that sounds more formal than it is. It's really kind of a strengths-based, gentle gathering for paid readers of my newsletter. We gather for an hour. I bring some writing prompts or some conversation topics, guide us through some writing and reflection. And it's just a chance for all of us to be in the same time and space together once a month for an hour and really tend our creativity in a way that is nourishing and generous and, again, strengths-based, practicing looking at our creativity in that more generous and sustainable way. So that's also a really important community that I help facilitate right now. That's really important.
And it sounds like you have a giveaway for our listeners that is through Substack.
Yes.
Or for your newsletter through Substack.
Yes.
Do you want to tell everyone about that?
Yeah. So like I said, for paid readers of that newsletter, they get all of the issues I publish, all the writing prompts, self-coaching tools, all that stuff. But then once a month, we gather through Zoom for that Resiliency Circle gathering. And so I'm giving a 2-month comped subscription to that community for your listeners. So that's would give them a chance to not only receive all of the issues I publish for the next 2 months, but to attend 2 of those resiliency circles, check it out, see what it's like. I don't know when this episode will air, but we generally have summer ahead of us. So I will probably do something special around the summer solstice, some kind of like seasonal creative check-in with some guided questions for reflecting at this particular moment of the year. So yeah, folks will get to attend 2 of those. And I really encourage listeners to take advantage of that.
That is one of the most unique and impactful giveaways that we've had on the podcast.
Oh,
and
cool.
I think people will take advantage of it, and the link to sign up will be in the show notes, so they can grab it there. Sarah, I just, I started having, as you were talking, I started having these visions of our listeners. Like, all of our listeners are healthcare providers. They're starting businesses, they're solopreneurs, they're group practice owners, clinic owners, wellness center owners, and a lot of them are interested in being authors and writing books about their experiences and, their methods that they create. And so I just think of you for that. I think that you'll be a great resource for our listeners. And if people do want to reach out to you directly, how can they do that?
Yeah, all the stuff I do, it can be found on my website. So sarahteresacook.com. It's just my full name. I will point out that Sarah does have an H in it and Teresa does not, but I'm sure that link will be included in the show notes as well.
And may I say, it is an absolutely inspirational website too. I've looked at it and you could just feel this joy coming through.
Oh, good. I spent a lot of time trying to create that experience. I'm grateful that it's coming through.
It is.
I agree. And it's been just such a joy chatting with you today, Sarah. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was delightful.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wellness Center Creators podcast. We hope you found this episode informative and valuable.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a rating and review. Your support helps us reach more health and wellness professionals like you.
For additional resources, show notes, and more episodes, visit our website at wellnesscentercreators.com.
We'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts, experiences, and questions. Feel free to reach out to us through our website or social media channels.
Once again, thank you for listening. We appreciate your dedication to providing exceptional patient care.
Join us next time as we continue exploring the world of wellness center creation. Until then, take care and keep making a difference.
Thanks for listening to the Wellness Center Creators podcast.